I caught my girlfriend catfishing as a guy to test my loyalty with my own brother. The person you trust most can become your biggest betrayer in the most unexpected ways. My name is Michael, and I'm 28 years old. I've been dating Ashley for 3 years, and I thought we had the perfect relationship. We met through mutual friends at a party, and from the moment our eyes met across the crowded room, I knew she was someone special. Ashley was beautiful, with long chestnut hair that cascaded down her back and piercing green eyes that seemed to look right into my soul. She had a smile that could light up the darkest room and a laugh that was infectious. For 3 years, we built what I believed was a solid foundation of trust, love, and mutual respect. We moved in together after our 2nd anniversary, and I was seriously considering proposing to her on our upcoming 4th anniversary. That's why what I discovered on that fateful Tuesday evening shattered my world completely. I had come home early from work, planning to surprise Ashley with dinner reservations at her favorite restaurant. As I entered our apartment, I noticed she was hunched over her laptop, typing furiously. She didn't hear me come in, so I quietly approached from behind, intending to wrap my arms around her and plant a kiss on her cheek. But what I saw on her screen made me freeze in my tracks. Ashley was logged into a social media account that clearly wasn't hers. The profile picture was of an attractive man with chiseled features, dark hair, and a muscular build. The username was Jackson Thompson 88, and the bio described him as a 29-year-old fitness enthusiast who loved traveling and meeting new people. But what caught my attention most was the conversation Ashley was having with herself. She was messaging someone from this mail account, and the recipient was her own personal account. I stood there, unseen, as I watched her craft messages from this Jackson character to herself. The messages were flirty, suggestive, and designed to test her loyalty to me. She would write as Jackson, complimenting her photos, asking if she was happy in her relationship, and suggesting they meet up. Then she would switch to her own account and respond, always politely declining but leaving the door open for future conversations. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Was Ashley catfishing herself? Or worse, was she planning to cheat and creating this elaborate scenario to cover her tracks? I felt sick to my stomach as I continued to watch, my heart pounding in my chest. The woman I loved, the woman I planned to spend the rest of my life with, was engaged in some sort of deceptive online behavior that I couldn't begin to understand. I quietly backed away from the living room and slipped out of the apartment, my mind reeling from what I had just witnessed. I needed time to process this information before confronting her. As I drove around aimlessly, my thoughts were a jumbled mess. How long had this been going on? Was this something she did regularly? And most importantly, why would she do something like this? When I returned home hours later, Ashley was waiting for me, her laptop closed and a smile on her face as if nothing was wrong. She greeted me with a hug and a kiss, completely unaware that I had discovered her secret. That night, as we lay in bed, I pretended to be asleep while my mind raced, trying to figure out my next move. Little did I know that this was just the tip of the iceberg, and the truth was far more complicated and devastating than I could ever imagine. The next morning, I woke up before Ashley, my mind still reeling from what I had discovered the previous evening. I watched her sleeping peacefully beside me, her chestnut hair spread across the pillow, and felt a pang of conflicting emotions. On one hand, I loved this woman more than anything. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that had taken root in my heart. As I quietly got out of bed and made my way to the kitchen to make coffee, I knew I had to confront her about what I had seen, but I wasn't sure how to approach the situation. While the coffee brewed, I decided to do some investigation of my own. Ashley had left her laptop open on the kitchen table, and despite the guilt I felt for invading her privacy, I couldn't resist the urge to look deeper into this Jackson Thompson 88 account. What I discovered sent another shockwave through my system. The account had been active for 6 months, with hundreds of messages exchanged between Jackson and Ashley. But what caught my attention was that Ashley wasn't just messaging herself, she was also messaging other women, and even more disturbingly, she was messaging my brother, Ryan. I quickly closed the laptop when I heard Ashley approaching, my hands trembling slightly. She greeted me with a good morning kiss and asked what I wanted to do for the day, completely oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. As I sipped my coffee, I tried to act normal, but every time I looked at her, all I could see was the deception she had been hiding from me. Throughout the day, I struggled with how to bring up the topic. Part of me wanted to explode with anger and accusations, but another part of me wanted to understand why she would do something like this. Was she insecure in our relationship? Was she testing me for some reason? Or was there something more sinister going on that I hadn't yet discovered? That evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I finally worked up the courage to confront her. I paused the movie and turned to face her, my heart pounding in my chest. I told her what I had seen the previous evening, watching as her face went from confusion to horror, then to resignation as she realized she had been caught. Ashley broke down in tears, confessing that she had created the Jackson Thompson 88 account 6 months ago as a way to test my loyalty. She explained that she had been feeling insecure in our relationship after overhearing some of her friends talk about how common cheating was in long-term relationships. She wanted to see if I would be tempted to cheat if an attractive man showed interest in her, even though she was in a committed relationship with me. As she explained her reasoning, I felt a mix of emotions: anger at her deception, pity for her insecurity, and confusion about why she felt this was the only way to test my loyalty. I asked her why she didn't just talk to me about her fears instead of creating this elaborate ruse. She admitted that she was embarrassed about her insecurities and didn't know how to bring them up without sounding needy or accusatory. The conversation was long and emotional, with both of us crying at different points. By the end of it, I was exhausted, but also somewhat relieved that the catfishing was limited to her testing my loyalty and not her planning to cheat. I told her that while I understood her fears, this was not the way to address issues in a relationship. We agreed to work on our communication and rebuild the trust that had been broken. As we went to bed that night, I thought we had turned a corner. Ashley had deleted the Jackson Thompson 88 account in front of me, and we had made promises to be more open with each other. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the memory of seeing my brother's name in those message threads. Little did I know that the deception went far deeper than I had imagined, and the worst was yet to come. The days following my confrontation with Ashley were a delicate balance of healing and suspicion. I wanted to believe that we had addressed the issue and could move forward, but the trust that had been the foundation of our relationship had been severely damaged. Every time Ashley picked up her phone or opened her laptop, I found myself wondering what she was doing. Despite her assurances that the catfishing was over, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. A week after our conversation, I was at my brother Ryan's apartment for our weekly game night. As we sat on his couch playing video games and drinking beer, I couldn't help but notice how often he checked his phone. At first, I didn't think much of it. Ryan had always been somewhat attached to his device. But then I noticed the smile that would appear on his face whenever he received a notification. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked him who had him smiling so much. Ryan's reaction was immediate and suspicious. He quickly locked his phone and placed it face down on the table, brushing off my question with a vague comment about a funny meme. But I knew my brother well enough to recognize when he was hiding something. The way he avoided eye contact and the slight blush that crept up his neck told me there was more to the story than he was letting on. As the evening progressed, I found myself watching Ryan more closely. When he went to the bathroom, I couldn't resist the urge to glance at his phone. The notification that had made him smile earlier was still on the screen, and what I saw made my blood run cold. It was a message from Jackson Thompson 88, the same fake account Ashley had created to test my loyalty. But this time, the message wasn't flirty or suggestive. It was a receipt for a hotel room booking for the upcoming weekend, with a note that read, "Can't wait to finally meet in person, Ryan." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Not only had Ashley been catfishing me, but she had also been messaging my brother. And from the looks of it, they had been planning to meet in person. The question that raced through my mind was whether Ryan knew he was talking to Ashley or if he thought he was genuinely meeting a man named Jackson. When Ryan returned from the bathroom, I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing with possibilities. Was Ashley cheating on me with my own brother, or was this another one of her tests? And if it was a test, what was she trying to prove? That my brother would cheat on his girlfriend, or that she could seduce both of us? The rest of the evening was a blur. I went through the motions of playing video games and making small talk, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time Ryan smiled at his phone, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could he do this to me? And how could Ashley be so cruel as to involve my own brother in her twisted games? When I got home that night, Ashley was waiting for me, excited to show me the romantic getaway she had planned for us for the upcoming weekend, the same weekend that Ryan had a hotel room booked with Jackson. As she described the cabin she had rented, complete with a hot tub and fireplace, I felt sick to my stomach. Was this her way of ensuring I wouldn't discover her meeting with Ryan? Or was she genuinely trying to make things right between us? I didn't know how to process all this information. Part of me wanted to confront both Ashley and Ryan immediately, but another part of me needed to understand the full scope of their deception before making any decisions. I decided to play along with Ashley's weekend plans while secretly planning to show up at the hotel where Ryan was supposed to meet Jackson. As I lay in bed that night, Ashley sleeping peacefully beside me, I couldn't help but wonder how deep this rabbit hole went. Was this the first time they had planned to meet, or had they been meeting behind my back for months? And most importantly, what would I do if I walked into that hotel room and found them together? The answers to these questions would determine the future of not just my relationship with Ashley, but also my relationship with my brother. The next few days were an exercise in self-control, as I maintained a facade of normalcy while my mind was anything but calm. I went to work, came home, and engaged in pleasant conversations with Ashley, all while secretly planning my confrontation with both her and my brother. Every time Ashley mentioned our upcoming romantic getaway, I had to force a smile and act excited, when in reality I was dreading the weekend and what it might reveal. During this time, I also had to interact with Ryan, pretending that everything was normal between us. We had our usual lunch on Wednesday, and as we sat across from each other at our favorite diner, I studied him closely, looking for any signs of guilt or deception. But Ryan was as charming and easygoing as always, joking about work and asking about my plans for the weekend. When I mentioned the romantic getaway Ashley had planned, he seemed genuinely happy for me, which only added to my confusion. Was he really that good of an actor, or did he not know that Jackson was actually Ashley? By Thursday, I was a bundle of nerves. I had managed to find out which hotel Ryan had booked through a casual conversation about weekend plans. He had mentioned staying at that new boutique hotel downtown without specifying the name, but a quick search of recent hotel openings in the area led me to the Sterling, a luxury hotel that had opened 3 months ago. Using Ashley's laptop while she was in the shower, I was able to access the deleted Jackson Thompson 88 account through the email trash folder, where I found the confirmation email for the room booking. The reservation was under Ryan's name for Saturday night with a check-in time of 3 p.m. Friday evening, as Ashley and I were packing for our romantic getaway, I made an excuse about having to go into the office early Saturday morning to finish an important project. I suggested that she go ahead to the cabin and I would meet her there by late afternoon. Ashley seemed disappointed but understood, giving me a passionate kiss and telling me how much she was looking forward to our weekend together. As I watched her drive away, a wave of guilt washed over me. I was deceiving her just as she had deceived me, but I told myself that this was necessary to get to the truth. That night, I barely slept. My mind was racing with scenarios of what might happen the next day. Would I find Ashley and Ryan together, or would I discover that this was all part of another one of Ashley's tests? And if it was a test, what did that say about our relationship? Could we ever rebuild the trust that had been so thoroughly broken? Saturday morning, I woke up before my alarm, my heart already pounding in anticipation of the day ahead. I got dressed and made my way to the Sterling, arriving around 2:30 p.m. I took a seat in the hotel lobby, pretending to read a newspaper while keeping an eye on the entrance. My plan was to wait for Ryan to arrive, follow him to the room, and then confront both of them. As I sat there, my mind drifted back to all the memories I had with Ashley and Ryan separately. Ashley and I had shared so many wonderful moments over the past 3 years: vacations, holidays, quiet evenings at home, and exciting adventures out in the city. Ryan and I had grown up together, sharing everything from toys as children to secrets as teenagers. How could both of them betray me like this? And more importantly, how would I react if my worst fears were confirmed? At 3:15 p.m., I saw Ryan enter the hotel lobby. He was dressed nicely, wearing a button-down shirt and slacks, which was unusual for him on a Saturday. He approached the front desk, checked in, and then headed towards the elevators. I waited a few minutes before following, my heart pounding in my chest. I took the next elevator up, watching as the floor numbers climb, knowing that with each passing second, I was getting closer to a truth that might destroy everything I held dear. As I stepped out of the elevator on the 6th floor, I saw Ryan turning down the hallway towards room 607. I followed at a distance, my footsteps barely making a sound on the plush carpeting. I watched as he knocked on the door, and my breath caught in my throat as I waited for it to open. This was it, the moment of truth. The door swung open, and what I saw on the other side made my blood run cold and my world come crashing down around me. The door to room 607 swung open, but instead of Ashley standing there in some seductive outfit as I had braced myself for, it was my brother Ryan's girlfriend, Jessica. She greeted Ryan with a passionate kiss, pulling him into the room and closing the door behind them. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind struggling to process what I had just witnessed. Where was Ashley? And why was Jessica meeting Ryan at a hotel under the pretense of meeting Jackson? I stood there for several minutes, my mind racing with possibilities. Was Jessica in on the deception, or was she another victim of Ashley's catfishing scheme? And if Jessica was Jackson's intended target, what did that mean for Ashley's supposed test of my loyalty? My phone buzzed in my pocket, jolting me from my thoughts. It was a text from Ashley, asking if I had finished my work yet and when I would be arriving at the cabin. I quickly typed back a response, saying I was running a bit behind but would be there soon. As I hit send, I felt another wave of guilt wash over me. Here I was, spying on my brother and his girlfriend, while Ashley was waiting for me at a cabin she had rented to reconnect with me. I decided to wait in the hallway, hoping to get more information. About 30 minutes later, the door to room 607 opened again, and this time, both Ryan and Jessica stepped out. But they weren't alone. With them was another couple, a man and woman who looked to be in their early 30s. As they all walked towards the elevator, laughing and chatting like old friends, I realized that this wasn't a secret rendezvous, but a double date. I quickly ducked into a nearby alcove, my heart pounding as they passed by. As they waited for the elevator, I overheard snippets of their conversation. They were talking about a surprise party they were planning for someone named Mark and how excited they were to finally meet Jackson in person. My blood ran cold as I realized that Ryan and Jessica weren't the only ones who had been communicating with this fake persona. Once they were in the elevator and the doors had closed, I emerged from my hiding spot, my mind reeling from this new development. It seemed that Ashley's catfishing scheme was far more extensive than I had initially thought. She wasn't just testing my loyalty, she was catfishing multiple people, including my brother's girlfriend and possibly others. I made my way back to the lobby, my mind racing with questions. Why would Ashley do something like this? Was it all for some twisted sense of entertainment? Or was there a deeper, more psychological reason behind her actions? And most importantly, how many people had she deceived in this elaborate game? As I sat in my car, trying to decide what to do next, I received another text from Ashley, this one with a picture of the cabin, complete with a crackling fire and 2 glasses of wine waiting on the coffee table. The caption read, "Waiting for you." Looking at the image, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. On one hand, I was angry and hurt by her deception. On the other hand, a part of me still loved her and wanted to understand why she had done something so elaborate and cruel. I started the car and began driving towards the cabin, my mind still trying to make sense of everything I had discovered. As I drove, I couldn't help but wonder if Ashley had intended for me to find out about her catfishing scheme. Maybe this was all part of an even bigger test, one designed to see how I would react when faced with betrayal and deception. When I arrived at the cabin, Ashley was waiting for me on the porch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and a worried expression on her face. As I approached, she rushed towards me, her eyes searching mine for any sign of what I had discovered. I forced a smile, wrapping my arms around her and pulling her close. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, I knew that this weekend would be a turning point in our relationship, one way or another. That evening, as we sat by the fire, sipping wine and talking, I decided to test the waters, mentioning that I had run into Ryan earlier that day. I watched Ashley's reaction carefully, noting the slight flicker of panic in her eyes before she quickly composed herself. She asked what Ryan was up to, and I told her I had seen him checking into a hotel downtown, adding that I thought it was strange since he was supposed to be working on a project with Jessica that day. Ashley's response was carefully measured. She suggested that maybe Ryan and Jessica were having a romantic weekend, just like we were, but I could see the tension in her shoulders and the way she avoided eye contact as she spoke. I knew then that she was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what it was. As the night wore on, I found myself watching Ashley more closely, looking for any signs that might give away her secret. But she was careful, maintaining the facade of a loving girlfriend who was simply enjoying a romantic weekend with her partner. It wasn't until we were getting ready for bed that I found what I was looking for, a slip of paper peeking out of her wallet with the name of the hotel where I had seen Ryan earlier that day, along with a room number that was different from the one where I had seen him with Jessica. The discovery of the hotel room number in Ashley's wallet sent my mind into overdrive. If Ryan was with Jessica in one room, why did Ashley have a different room number written down? Was she planning to meet someone else at the hotel? Or was this all part of an even more elaborate scheme than I had initially thought? As I lay in bed that night, Ashley sleeping peacefully beside me, I knew I couldn't let this go. I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant confronting the possibility that our relationship was built on a foundation of lies and deception. The next morning, I woke up before Ashley, my mind already made up. I told her that I had received an urgent call from work and needed to go into the office for a few hours. I suggested that she enjoy the cabin and that I would be back by early afternoon. Ashley seemed disappointed but understanding, giving me a quick kiss before rolling over to go back to sleep. As I drove away from the cabin, my heart was heavy with what I might discover. I wasn't just heading to the office. I was going back to the Sterling Hotel to find out what was really going on. But first, I made a detour to my apartment, where I hoped to find more clues about Ashley's elaborate catfishing scheme. When I arrived at our apartment, I went straight to Ashley's laptop, which she had left behind in her haste to pack for our weekend getaway. Using the password I knew from helping her set up the device, I logged in and began searching through her files. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for, a folder labeled Project Jackson, which contained detailed notes, profiles, and conversation logs from multiple people she had been catfishing. As I scrolled through the documents, my shock turned to horror. Ashley hadn't just been catfishing me, Ryan, and Jessica. She had been communicating with at least 10 other people under the Jackson Thompson 88 persona. Each person had a detailed profile, complete with their likes, dislikes, insecurities, and relationship status. She had been playing a dangerous game, manipulating the emotions of multiple people for what appeared to be her own entertainment. But what shocked me most was the discovery of a separate folder within Project Jackson labeled Phase 2. Inside were detailed plans for in-person meetings with each of her targets, complete with scenarios, dialogue, and contingency plans. It seemed that Ashley's catfishing wasn't just an online game. She had been planning to take it to the next level by meeting each person in person while maintaining her Jackson persona. As I read through the plans for Ryan and Jessica, I discovered that Ashley had intended to meet them separately at the hotel. She had booked 2 rooms, one for her meeting with Ryan under the guise of Jackson, and another for her meeting with Jessica, also as Jackson. The plan was to test their loyalty to each other by seeing if they would be tempted to cheat with someone they had been flirting with online. But what I couldn't understand was why. Why would Ashley go to such elaborate lengths to test the loyalty of not just me, but also my brother and his girlfriend and at least 8 other people? Was she some sort of sociopath who enjoyed manipulating others? Or was there a deeper, more psychological reason behind her actions? As I continued to dig through Ashley's files, I found a journal entry that shed some light on her motivations. In it, she wrote about being cheated on by her first boyfriend in college, and how that betrayal had left her with deep-seated trust issues. She described how she had developed a loyalty test to determine whether people were truly faithful or if everyone was capable of cheating given the right circumstances. The Jackson persona was her way of conducting these tests on a larger scale, gathering data to confirm her belief that everyone was fundamentally untrustworthy. Reading her words, I felt a mix of pity and anger. Pity for the pain she had experienced that had led her down this path, and anger for the way she had chosen to deal with her trauma by inflicting it on others. Her actions were not just a betrayal of our relationship, but a violation of the trust of multiple people who had done nothing to deserve such manipulation. With this new understanding, I knew what I had to do. I copied all the files from Ashley's laptop onto a USB drive, then made my way to the Sterling Hotel, determined to put an end to this elaborate deception once and for all. When I arrived at the hotel, I went straight to the front desk and asked to be connected to the room number I had found in Ashley's wallet. When the receptionist asked who was calling, I said Jackson Thompson. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then a voice I recognized immediately, Ashley's, disguised to sound more masculine, answered, "Jackson speaking." Taking a deep breath, I replied, "No, this is Michael, and I think we need to talk." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For what felt like an eternity, neither of us spoke, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could hear Ashley's breathing, quick and shallow, a clear indication that she was panicking. Finally, she spoke, her voice no longer disguised, but filled with a mixture of shock and fear. She asked how I had found her, and I told her about the hotel room number I had found in her wallet, as well as the Project Jackson folder on her laptop. Ashley's response was a cascade of apologies and explanations. She confessed everything, how she had been catfishing multiple people as Jackson, how she had planned to meet each of them in person to test their loyalty, and how her own insecurities and past trauma had driven her to such extreme measures. She admitted that she had never intended to physically cheat with anyone, but had become obsessed with proving her theory that everyone was capable of betrayal given the right circumstances. As I listened to her confession, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The anger and hurt that had been simmering inside me for the past week had been replaced by a profound sadness, not just for our relationship, but for Ashley herself. I realized that her actions, while hurtful and manipulative, stemmed from a place of deep pain and insecurity. She wasn't a villain in a story of betrayal. She was a broken person trying to protect herself from being hurt again, even if her methods were twisted and harmful. I told Ashley that I was coming up to the room, and when I arrived, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her face streaked with tears. The room was immaculate, with no signs of anyone else having been there. It seemed that I had arrived before her scheduled meeting with Ryan, which was a small mercy in this whole mess. We talked for hours, laying bare all the secrets and lies that had accumulated between us. Ashley explained how her first boyfriend's betrayal had left her with a pathological fear of being cheated on, and how she had developed the Jackson persona as a way to test people's loyalty before fully investing in them. She admitted that our relationship was the longest and most serious she had ever been in, and as our anniversary approached, her fears had intensified, leading her to escalate her testing. I, in turn, shared my own feelings of betrayal and confusion, explaining how her actions had not only hurt me, but had also damaged my relationship with my brother and his girlfriend. I told her that while I understood the pain that had driven her to this point, her methods were cruel and manipulative, and they had broken the trust that was essential to our relationship. As the afternoon sun streamed through the hotel window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, we both knew that this was the end of our relationship. The love we once shared had been tainted by deception, and the trust we had built had been irreparably damaged. We parted ways with a heavy heart, both of us acknowledging that while we had once been deeply in love, there was no coming back from this level of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I had to navigate the difficult task of explaining the situation to Ryan and Jessica without causing further damage to their relationship. I decided to show them the files I had copied from Ashley's laptop, letting them see for themselves the extent of her deception. To my relief, they both understood that they had been victims in Ashley's twisted game. And while the initial shock was difficult, they were able to move past it and strengthen their own relationship. As for Ashley, I heard through mutual friends that she had checked herself into therapy to address her trust issues and the trauma that had led to her behavior. A part of me hoped that she would find the healing she needed and learn to build healthy relationships based on trust rather than testing and manipulation. Looking back on this experience, I've come to realize that trust is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. Once it's broken, it's incredibly difficult to rebuild. While I still carry the scars of Ashley's betrayal, I've also learned valuable lessons about communication, boundaries, and the importance of addressing insecurities in healthy ways rather than resorting to deception. Today, as I stand at the threshold of a new chapter in my life, I'm more cautious but also more hopeful. I know that not everyone is like Ashley, and that true love, built on trust, respect, and open communication, is still possible. The experience has left me wiser and more discerning, but it hasn't hardened my heart. If anything, it's made me more appreciative of the genuine connections I have with the people in my life, and more committed to nurturing those connections with honesty and integrity. As I close this chapter of my life, I'm reminded of something my grandmother once told me. The truth may hurt for a little while, but a lie hurts forever. Ashley's deception hurt deeply, but discovering the truth, as painful as it was, set me free to move forward and find the happiness I deserve. And for that, I'm grateful.